Alright, good morning, welcome to this replay. I'm going to be doing a new book. This is the mind map for the new book. It's definitely something where if it gets published by a actual publisher, then it will make the most sense for them to pick that actual title of the book. But who knows what will happen with that. Um, it's always up to them, right? So, in any case, how do you write a book? Well, I like to mind map things first, and this mind map has a bunch of information on it about what I'm going to put in this book. And of course, I'm always open to ideas. I've got tons and tons of ideas actually to include. And basically, writing a book starts with outlining. So that is what I'm certainly going to be working on. If you're joining us on the live, say hello, hit that thumbs up, and let me know what you would like to see in a book. Hamad's here, says hello. Hello, Hamad. How are you doing? Great for you to be here. Adam's here. Hi, Adam. Great to see you. It's, of course, you're inspiring this, Adam, because of your email. And I had finished this mind map a little while ago and hadn't really gotten started writing the book, because one of the things that needs to happen is it needs to be sort of formalized into an outline, and then that outline becomes the structure of the book and how it's going to be related and so forth. And in this particular case, I'm trying to think of what do people need, what do they want, and I thought it'd be fun to just hop on, partly inspired by yourself, Adam, and announce this new book and type the first words, because I haven't actually started typing the first words yet. So to that end, I got my handy keyboard here. You may not have seen a keyboard like this in your life before, but this is what the serious writers use. Serious, I guess. I bet you a lot of serious writers don't use them. But this is called a safe type keyboard, and what it lets you do is type real fast without strain on your wrists, and real fast without strain on your shoulders. I normally use it half standing, half sitting up, but I'll put it in my lap and I can type really fast with it. It's USB, so it sticks in there like that. I would highly recommend that you get a black one. I've carried this sucker around the world with me. It's gotten quite yellow over the years. I'm normally a pretty clean guy, but this thing is really not really pleasant. So get a black one if you get one. And I need a new one anyway, just because they wear down. But they sound cool. They sound very cool. Yeah, and I like writing books. It's been not very long since I wrote The Memory Connection, but just seems like The Memory Connection didn't have something. And I'd like to know what that something is, and you probably do know. So what should a memory technique book cover? What's missing? What have you been looking for that isn't covered before? I'll share with you some of the ideas. If that sounds good, hit the thumbs up, let me know. Otherwise, I can keep them till the end, put them in the book itself. One of the things that really is missing from a lot of books is the idea of practice. And then if you're going to use apps, which I don't recommend, but if you're going to use apps, which apps are the most likely to actually get you somewhere instead of trapping you in the app loop of inactivity and lack of results, which is fairly common. So that's part of it. We also have the whole idea of understanding what time of day is best for you to practice. No one can tell you what time of day is best for you to practice. The reason why no one can tell you is because you've got to try different times of day yourself and kind of figure that out. So Hamad's got a great question, and it's something that I actually need to include in this book. So I'm going to just type in here, Hamad, make sure I spell it right. I'm not used to typing at this particular angle, so I'll put it in my lap here. Hamad says, can you use 100%? Is it possible for a human to use 100% of his brain? Wow, I never wrote a book live before. Okay, well, here's the thing. You're using 100% of your brain right now, right? It's in you. Let's put it this way. Is there a percent of your body that you're not using right now to be, right? If you think down to the most microscopic edge of your big toenail on the left foot, is there a percentage of it that you're not using to be you? Just makes sense, right? So maybe refine that question a little bit, Hamad. I think you're on the verge of a really powerful question, but that's not quite it, right? So I'm gonna just make a note here, toenail example, because a lot of people ask that. It's a very common question. It's like it's not quite the question that we're looking for. I think it relates to the idea of memory power, which is another thing I got to put in here, which might be in the title actually, memory power, because a lot of people say this, but what does memory power mean, right? Adam says it was a misquote from Einstein that we only use 20% of our brain. Great, thank you for mentioning Einstein. I got to put Einstein in this book. I'm actually reading a book right now called A World Without Time about the relationship between Einstein and Gödel, and that's a different issue. But here's the thing with Einstein quotes. They're always misquotes, okay? People quote Einstein like it's going out of style. They're always out of context, and they're by people who haven't read any Einstein, and they don't know, usually, the context in which those quotes came. And so they're saying a bunch of dumb stuff that really has nothing to do with what Einstein actually said, okay? So we gotta be careful with Einstein quotes. I don't know if Hamad is meaning to quote Einstein there, but you're always using 100% of your brain. You're using 100% of your body. You're using 100% of you. Yeah, Adam says same with Nietzsche. Exactly. Nietzsche is often quoted with the quote, whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But that's not the quote. The quote is whatever does, well, that's actually in German for one thing, but it's actually, in the broader context, it's whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If you're a soldier, it's a statement against pointing out the stupidity of war, ideological war in particular. So don't go around quoting that, because it's not what was said, it's not what was meant. The Joker probably got it a lot better when he said, whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stranger. And stranger is good. So Einstein misquotes. We got to definitely include that in this book. Thank you for raising that, Adam. Brilliant. Okay, anybody else got some things? And Hamad, please think of that question a little bit differently. If you want to refine it, good chance to do so now. Now, one of the things is that people struggle with recalling stuff that they know that they know. So I want to put that in the book. Struggling to recall things you're certain you're aware of. Also, speaking of Nietzsche, Jung talked about cryptomancy, and he pointed at Nietzsche as an example of cryptomancy because he thought that Nietzsche was failing to remember his sources. So Nietzsche was talking about certain things that he claimed were sort of his unique original ideas, but he had forgotten that he had read them somewhere else. And Jung called that cryptomnesia. So I got to put in Jung's cryptomnesia into this book. All right. Now, the challenge is, how do I make that useful for you? So I'm looking for those of you who are live here, hit the thumbs up and post in what you want to see in a new memory improvement book. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to know, and maybe we can include it. But one of the huge things is the struggle to recall information that you know, but where has it gone? All right, Hamad comes back. Thank you, Hamad. Are we using left brain and the right brain at the same time? I've heard that sometimes we are only using the right brain and sometimes the left. Both aren't active at the same time. Yeah, there's a lot of people who will sell you a lot of stories about the left brain and the right brain sort of stuff. I think the real path to mastery here is, what do you want to do with your brain regardless of right brain, left brain stuff, right? So what is the use of that? If someone said, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you're only using your left side of the brain. What use can we do with, what can we do with that information, right? The reality is that we can't do anything with any of that. What we need to do is focus on what techniques exist, what's the information that we want to memorize, will the information help us actually improve our lives, and do we really want our lives to be improved in that way? And so what are we going to do to create a program of self-study and self-practice and implementation of techniques over time in order to get those results. Then it doesn't really matter whether your left or your right brain is involved, because you're going to be involved in just getting the result that you want. And you can go and pay lots of money to get MRIs and CT scans and all this kind of stuff that could prove to you beyond a doubt that, oh yes, now your left and right brain are working in harmony and all that sort of stuff. Doesn't really matter. And I say this not with criticism or satire or snottiness, but really with deep concern for getting out of the trap of questions that lead nowhere, right? Does it really matter if the left and right brain are working together? If you're into brain neuroscience and you want to become a neuroscientist and so forth, those are questions that may concern you in terms of providing evidence that might cure diseases and so forth. But when it comes to memory improvement, be like the Flash, show up on time. That's really, really important. So, Hamad, I'm going to make note of this here in my little book. Are we using left brain and right brain at the same time? I really appreciate it, by the way, and I don't mean to be dismissive of it. I just can't imagine that these are the questions that lead to memory improvement. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Activate both at the same time. And I'm sure that these things do, but the real thing is it getting the result? If you need to memorize 10 vocabulary words, 2,000 terms of anatomy for the human body and the actions and the muscles and all that sort of stuff, is having both sides of the brain going to get you the result, or is a dedicated memory strategy that works regardless of your understanding of the brain going to work? Is that the path? That's the question that I want people to ask. Omar's here. Hi, Omar. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, let me know with a thumbs up that you're engaged. Let me know what you would like to see in a new memory improvement book, and I will put it in there, most likely. Omar says, struggle with the crazy imagination imagery. So, struggle with magnetic imagery. Okay, well, tell me more. Why do you struggle? What's going on? What are you doing? Are there any techniques to improve or exercise this? So, techniques for improving and exercising imagery. Well, yes, there are many, 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 many. And the first is to understand what mental imagery is. So there are 7 modes of mental imagery. So I got to include the 7 modes of mental imagery. And I'll tell you them very quickly here, Omar, because that's such a good question. So you've got the visual mode, and there are at least 7, okay? There may be more. Visual mode, auditory mode, kinesthetic mode, you've got the olfactory mode, the gustatory mode, the conceptual mode, and the spatial mode, okay? Those are at least what we've got to work with. And how do you exercise them all? Well, first of all, you remember them, right? There's a neat way to remember them all. I call it cave cog. So imagine a cave filled with cogs. Cave, spell it with a C, right? Conceptual, auditory, visual. Cog with a K. Kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. Now, the cave itself is the space, the 7th mode. It was Megaston topos hapantagar kori. Megaston topos hapantagar kori was what Thales said. Space is ultimate, for it contains all things. So remember that cave, space, the memory palace. That is the ultimate mental image, right? And everything else happens inside of it. All of those other things, right? So we went through them. Watch the replay if you need it. Now, in terms of exercising them, what better way to exercise them than to create lots and lots of memory palaces and have missions where you learn information using memory techniques, right? So whatever that information is, maybe it's a deck of playing cards, maybe you want to make yourself a handy little thing like this, 45 and 63, is that 36? No, it's 23, sorry, I'm looking at it backwards. 0, 0, etc., 9, 0, and you want to just have a 0, 0 to 99, PAO, in your head. That'll exercise all of them, but make sure that you're hitting all of those magnetic modes. Hitting all the magnetic modes, and that will exercise it. So I'm just going to put here my cave cog, and 00 to 99. Definitely got to teach you 00 to 99 in the book. It's one of the best things that you can do. All right. Well, thank you for that, Omar. That's a great question. And yes, that's the best way to exercise it ultimately. Because what you're doing when you exercise it in that way is you're directing your learning of the memory techniques and your improvement with the memory techniques at the actual outcome that you're seeking. Isn't that great? All right, so if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know you're engaged. Let me know what you want to see in my new memory improvement book. And this is the mind map for the book. And I'm going to type the first words of this book, at least the draft, before we leave this call today. Okay, so Adam says meditation, specifically breath-focused meditation, will help you focus your imagery. Yeah, there are certain things I teach. If you don't have them, let me know, and you can get my guided meditation for spatial memory, for creative memory, and so forth. Dive deep into exercises on how to do that. So breath, very, very good. Excellent. Thank you for mentioning that. Breath for linking to guided meditation on imagery, creativity, and spatial memory. Awesome. Okay, let's see here. What else do we got? Great interaction, guys. Keep it coming. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Say hello. Hamad says, I watched this seminar on TED regarding learning a new skill within 24 hours. Any new skill. My aim regarding the brain is to be fast and to learn fast. Yeah, okay, so listen, that's called clickbait. Learn any new skill in 24 hours. Make $1 million in 25 seconds. I mean, we know this stuff, right? We know that that can't be true. Is there any skill you can learn in 24 hours? Well, actually, there is one. It's called memory techniques. You can learn it in 2 to 3 hours. Many people have gone to win memory championships based on reading half a book and going and doing this stuff. The question is, are you going to do what the training says, right? But any skill in 24 hours? Come on, right? There are skills that take years. There are skills that take decades. Any skill, the instant you see that, you know it's clickbait. The fact that it's on TED, well, you know that it's going to be an 18-minute to 23-minute video, right? So, with all due respect, namaste for all the greatness. TED, is that the message that we want to cultivate to people? That, yeah, watch a video and in 23 minutes you'll have it all? Maybe. In certain things, maybe. Some people will become enlightened in a very short period of time when you just say, you are it, and this is it. That's all there is. Some people wake up instantly, and they'll understand the glory that is of being, right? Other people will take decades to learn that, and yet other people will sit in caves meditating for their entire lives and never understand that simple truth, that this is all there is. This, right? Same thing with memory techniques. People will study it for years. They'll read every book under the sun, and they will never sit down and simply understand the basics of the techniques because they won't practice them. They won't do what I call SIP, which I got to put in my book. Study, implement, practice, SIP. So please use those kinds of videos with caution. Be skeptical. Be skeptical of everything. Be skeptical of everything that's being said now, but in a healthy, skeptical way. Don't dismiss knowledge when it's right in front of you, but just think deeply about it and think, any skill in 24 hours? Come on, really? Thumbs up if you agree. And I don't know, if you think that that's possible, then go watch some more TED Talks and enjoy. Because, you know, all this stuff with the internet is turning on the hunter-gatherer syndrome. Oh, a new video that's going to give me this. Oh, a new hey guys, I got 6 tips. No. You need extended study, and you need to study continuously over and over and over again. You know how it is, right? Before meditation, chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's the same thing with memory training. Before memory training, study, implement, practice memory training. After memory training, study, implement, practice memory training. Same thing with going to the gym. Go to the gym, push-ups, hammer curls, deadlifts, this thing, whatever you call all these moves that they got there, right? And then after you get there, more. Do it consistently, regularly, push yourself, hit you always make sure you're challenged. Then when you get frustration, you go back to challenge, but you never make it easy. Okay, so let's let's be real. Okay, that's what matters in the world, and it's just chop wood, carry water. Okay, so Hamad continued. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Let's do this. Adam says, Hamad, I believe that video also says that you have to redefine what you mean by learn, how proficient you want to be. Okay, that's good. I wouldn't mind watching that video, see what it says. Hamad says, yeah, but I'm confused about something. Why are some learners and why are some learners so fast, but we all humans have the same brains? Some people pick things fast and some slow. Hamad, that's a great question. That's a great question. I'm going to write that down and I'm going to answer it. Why are some learners faster than others when we all have the same brain? The answer is really simple. We don't all have the same brain. Hamad, you have your brain. You have the brain that's in your head, your skull. You have the brain that was born on a particular day at a particular hour in a particular city with particular resources, with particular parents, with particular things in the works that we're going to and will continue to lead you to have particular experiences, okay? Your brain is not like any other brain. Your brain is the one you have. It's not like my brain. It's not like anybody else's brain. No brain is the same. It's like a fingerprint, right? Except for it's like a fingerprint that has so many more impressions that are made upon it, both on autopilot, outside of your awareness, with your awareness, and then you have the question of free will and all that sort of stuff. So your question is excellent, but the answer, if you really listen to it, will set you free. It'll set you free for life. It'll awaken you and enlighten you if you really understand this. You are the only person who has the only brain that you can influence and impact and shape. You, right? But you've got to guard it against all of the randomness in the world, and you've got to nurture it. You've got to train it. You're the only one who can, right? But your brain is not like anybody else's. So it doesn't matter if other people learn faster. It doesn't matter if other people learn slower. Can you get clues from how they're learning? Absolutely. Can you get clues from how they're not learning? Absolutely. But why doesn't matter. It just is that way. And your brain is special because it's yours, relative to the specialness that you give it, to how you polish it every day, right? So Adam mentioned meditation, breathing meditation. Do you do that every day? Do you honor your memory every day? Do you polish it? Do you shine it up? Do you make it vibrant? Do you make it yours? Do you do the things that keep it healthy? Do you hydrate it? Do you feed it properly? Do you give your body fitness? Because your brain is physical. Do you do these things? Do you train it with memory? Do you have a deck of cards every morning, right? I was sick the last little week. I sort of took a break from training, but I always had some kind of deck of cards nearby, right? Whether it's a deck of cards I made myself, or it's a deck of cards that was made by the bicycle training company or whatever, just do a little bit every day, because it's my brain. I'm the only one who can do it. No one else is going to do it for me. Okay, enough of that speech. I think you know where I'm going, right? But it's a great question, and I want it in the book. Your brain is the only brain you have. Cherish it. Whatever. I know what to write later. Awesome. Thank you, Hamad. Brilliant. And I hope that answer helps you. If you really listen to it deeply, you will be free. You will be free to train and be the best possible version of yourself. Okay, so Adam says, are there types of information that cannot be put into a memory palace? Not that I've encountered yet. I haven't encountered any information that cannot be put in a memory palace. But throw some at me. Maybe we'll find some. But I'm going to ask that. Are there kinds of information that cannot be put in a memory palace? Well, that is an interesting question, actually. Because what then is information? What is information? That's the next question you've got to answer, right? So information, at its basic level, is something that can be stored and retrieved. Okay? So the brain / memory is an information storage retrieval device. Now, we don't want to make the mistake of making metaphors of the brain as a computer, because that doesn't work. We don't want to make metaphors of the brain as a city, because that doesn't work. There's a lot of things that just don't work, right? But if we're going to use a collection of neighborhoods in cities in districts, in provinces and countries makes more sense. By the way, if you've left a question, I'm coming to it. I'm going to answer everything. Thanks for being here. Hit that thumbs up if you're engaged. Let me know where you are in the world. And away we go. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be a great book. The best book I think I've ever written. Thank you, everybody, for contributing to it. And before I leave this call, I will live write the first words of the draft. It might be different in the final draft. So computer city metaphors don't work. Do you really need a metaphor? etc. I got to get into that. That's a meaty topic, really meaty. Of course, some of the reviewers will say, this book is filled with fluff. Yawn. Adam, watch out for that. There's a lot of people who won't understand what you're doing. And they will come with a compliment in one hand and a slap in the other. All right. So, good question though, but we got to understand first, what is information? At the very basic, information is something that can be stored and retrieved in the brain. And then that means that it can be communicated with other people. So info can be communicated and understood by other humans. So if you have like an experience that you're not able to communicate to another person, it's not really information, right? It's not really information. Maybe it is to you, but information technically, I would say, is something that can be communicated to another human being. Wow, everybody, all these comments are coming up. Don't worry, I'll be answering all of them. Keep them coming. But I like this question of, are there types of information that cannot be put in a memory palace? I would say that if it can't be put in a memory palace, it's probably not information, at least as I've defined it. Omar says, for example, words in Spanish use verdadero, which means true, or el algodón, which means cotton. I struggle to associate relevant images with them when I don't know what they mean. Okay, so I'm going to use your examples here. Verdadero. Let me see here. Verdadero. Oh man, why don't they just leave the chat on there? Sorry, don't mean to complain, YouTube. Love you. Thank you for doing this. Isn't this a miracle? Thumbs up if you think this is a miracle, that we can even do this at all. So, true. So this is Omar, I want to remember. Really glad to see you here, Omar. Awesome. Thank you for contributing to the new book. Truth, or true, and so el algodón. Well, maybe we'll put some examples about that in there. I better save this document here. So I have an idea, a title in my mind. It's somewhere encoded here, actually, if you can see it. Omar says, thank you for expanding on the spatial aspect. You're very welcome. Look, oh yeah, that reminds me, I got to put that Thales quote in there. Megastan topos hapantagar kori. Because I think that's on my mind map here, yeah. Megastan topos hapantagar kori. Oh, I remembered it correctly. Isn't that great? Memory techniques, 100%, they work. So Thales quote, that's probably going to be maybe the guiding quote. I think I want to have a quote per chapter. If there are any memory quotes you know that you think should be in the book, let me know. Okay, but Omar, here's the thing, right? Verdadero, right? So I instantly think of my friend Vera, right? And maybe she's in a fist fight with my dad, and maybe De Niro is there, and they're fighting over the truth. How do we know that they're fighting over the truth? Well, the Statue of Justice comes to my mind from the Metallica cover and Justice for All. So it's the sound and the meaning coming together, right? Maybe that's the example I will use in the book, maybe not. But maybe another one. So it's a matter of getting sound and meaning together in a way that recalls both at the same time. Let's see here. What about el algodón? Okay, so if you have a stock marker or magnetic image for masculine, then you're set, like a boxer. I like to use a boxer a lot. And then maybe he's with Al Pacino and maybe he's playing Go with, I don't know, Don McKellen or some Don that you know, right? I know a couple of Dons. I just have to think about it. So Al is playing Go with Dawn, and they're using cotton. So my magnetic imagery may not be the magnetic imagery that works for you, but just break it down, make sure that it's recalling the sound and the meaning. It's really much more simple than it seems. You just got to practice. How do you practice? Well, playing cards is a great way. Adam says, Hamad, we all have biological differences. I think this would account for differences in learning. Take a look at trait psychology. Yeah, there's lots of differences. Daniel, can you say again what CAVE stands for? Sorry. It's cog cave or cave cog. And yes, we can recover that for you from memory. Does anybody else remember? Do you want to type it in there? Maybe I can type it in. I'll go onto my own YouTube channel. That'll be fun. Let's see. I'll type it in the chat because it's really simple to remember. Look, I'm live now. Hilarious. Okay, so I'm going to type into my own chat here from one of my other YouTube channels. So you can do it like this. The 6 plus 1 magnetic modes. Cave cog. Conceptual, auditory, visual, kinesthetic. Now my own chats are coming up. Kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. Oh, it says I'm sending too many messages. Take a break and try again. Why don't you let me do hard pauses? Anyway, the last one is olfactory and gustatory. Jack's here. Hey, Jack. Thanks for saying hello. Have you missed a lot? Jack, you know me. If you're not here, the replay will fill you in. And yes, there's always a lot going on. Always a ton. But I'm glad that you're here because we're writing a book together. We're doing the outline together. The outline is here, but I'm getting your take on this, and then I'm going to write the first words live. First words of the first draft. So anyway, that's it's going to let me type that in a minute here. Okay, let's get back to our chat here. So Daniel, the last ones are coming up in a second here. Alexander, hello Alexander. Hi Anthony. How to train and combine the link method with memory palace. The memory palace is the link method. It's just the link method times 1,000. It's way more powerful. But I'll put that in the book. How to combine the memory palace with the link method. So here's the thing, right? Link method already uses spatial memory. Oh, I love writing books live. Cool. So why does the link method already use spatial memory? Tell me if this is true or not for you. It's true for me. If I just use a link without a memory palace, a linking method, then whatever I'm linking one thing to another is either going to be to the left or to the right or above or below or diagonal to something else, right? It's got a linear passage usually and is linked. So space is already there. Then it's a matter of, are you being strategic about space? So in order for linking to really, really work, you're going to, or most people will, I mean, I can't read into the minds of every single person, but there's always some kind of, in my experience talking with many memory people who use memory techniques or who have competed or who have written books about memory techniques, there's always some sort of spatial association, some sort of linear structure in linking. So it's already spatial. So to use a memory palace with the linking method is already to misunderstand that the memory palace is the linking method strategic, using the spatial mode of your memory. So what you're kind of doing is maybe making a memory palace-less spatial memory. There's lots of ways to think about it differently, but I just can't see how linking is not already spatial. And then, of course, the reason why the memory palace really explodes the power of linking, memory palace explodes the power of linking because it enables you to actually link inside of pre-existing structures that reduce cognitive load. So you'll hear Florian Delay, for example, talk about the wardrobe, which is actually from Ulrich Voigt uh, in Eselswelt, which is a great German book on memory techniques. You got to learn German just to read it. So I got to put in wardrobe here and Florian and Ulrich Voigt and so on. Wow, this is going to be such a good book. I never would have thought to put all this stuff in here. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Keep them coming. Hit that thumbs up. Let me know you're engaged. If you're just joining us, say hello. Say hello. And let me know what you want to see in a memory book. Anyway, I hope, Alexander, that helps to start answer your question. Really, the answer is just understand that thinking and memory palace are very much the same. It's just a matter of strategy and optimization. Harold's here. Hello, Harold. Great to see you. Let me know what you want to see in my new memory book. Alexander says how to train to combine link method with memory palace. Train to combine. Well, look, creating memory palaces is training in linking. It's just a specific kind, right? We'll talk more about that. I just think really the whole thing about training is just dive in, first of all. Study, implement, and practice memory techniques. That's how you train, ultimately. Try as many things as you can. Develop your own mnemonic style. If you want to use the magnetic memory method, well then, study the magnetic memory method. I recommend it in combination with an understanding of other people's methods. 1 is the most dangerous number in memory techniques. It is. It just is, right? 1 is the most dangerous number. Got to have that in there. It's a quote. I think it's a quote. I think it's a good quote. All right. So, where were we? We're on our chats here. Let's see. So many people here. Good, thank you. Hit that thumbs up. Let me know you're engaged. And say hello if you haven't already. Adam says schematics, diagrams, and maps are tough to place in a memory palace, in my opinion. Not if you've given it some work, not some practice. Schematics, in fact, in the magnetic memory method masterclass, there are many examples of how to do this. Place in memory palace. Yeah, we can cover that. I don't think it's all that interesting. It's super easy, but we can put it in there. Alexander says, what do you mean by the modes? Well, modes are modes of perception, right? So, if you think about music, music has Mixolydian and all those modes, right? Phrygian and so forth. And they're moods, tones, aspects, approaches to putting notes together, right? And the mental modes are not moods necessarily, but they're modes of behavior. So if you think about poetry, right? A sonnet is a mode or a genre of putting together words in order to convey meaning and rhythm and sound, right? But unrhymed free verse is another mode of poetry. If you think about, well, it's just genre. It's just a different mode. So visual mode is obviously not the auditory mode, right? It's a way that the brain receives information, but it receives it differently. And there are bridges between them, to be sure. You can see sound if you know how to read music, for example. And you can hear notes or you can see notes if you know how to hear music and see, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're different modes, but they bridge, they map together, but you don't necessarily have the same preference for one or the other, but we all have them. The question of what happens if you're blind and can you use memory techniques and so forth always comes up. Well, blind people may not have a visual mode, or people with aphantasia may not have a mind's eye as a visual mode, but they certainly have other kinds of modes of mental imagery. Kinesthetic, smell, taste, space. Very powerful. Good question, though. We'll be talking about that in a great deal. Let's see. Sandra's here. Hello, Sandra. Thanks for saying hello. How do you memorize music? I find muscle memory in my hands works better as rote learning, but it is not long lasting. I want to learn how to play Beethoven's Pathétique. Okay, well, Sandra, that's a really big topic, music. And so, what are you talking about? You want to memorize performance and have muscle memory last longer. Is that correct? So, music, memorization, muscle memory that lasts longer. Okay, well, do you read music? That's the first thing. And do you want to memorize the actual notes so that you could write it out compositionally? So write out compositions is a well-known way of supplementing muscle memory. And you could then think about how did you memorize what you wrote out, right? And so if you had the major method to help you remember notes, names of notes, the positions of those notes on the keys, then you'd probably find that you wouldn't forget so easily. But at the end of the day, you've got to understand that there is naturally enforced de-skilling. De-skilling is like entropy in the universe, right? So if you don't use it, as much as it's a cliche, you lose it, right? This is just well known. Entropy in the universe. And so it's like with German, right? I just ordered a book for the German book club here in Brisbane because I'm de-skilling German pretty bad, and I can still have a decent conversation and so forth. But as much as I haven't liked the book choices and so forth, I just said, gotta go and do it. Because my muscle memory is going. I think the muscle memory goes first with a language as it does with music, right? So it's the same thing with Bach. Like I can rip out a couple tunes on Bach, no problem, that I've memorized. But they have to be ones that I've played at least recently, because the ones that I haven't played for a couple of years, I can rip out a fair amount of them, but not all of them, because the muscle memory goes first. And the hard memorization of the notes and so forth is also gone. So when it comes to language or music, it's a different proposition. Everything comes down to use. And then, because language and music are related in terms of speed of what's memorized to speed of what the muscles retain, it's very different than knowledge in a topic. So for example, the difference here is if you're just going to wax on blah 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 about specialty, like for example, if I had forgotten that Eselswelt is called Eselswelt from Ulrich Voigt, right? What I could do is I could hum and haw and say a bunch of other words until that I finally got them back from my memory, because I do have them in memory, and there's reasons why I have them in memory and so on. But in music you can't do that, right? You can't hum and haw until you remember the notes. Although in some performances, of course, yes, you can start to improv and stuff. And there's a rule when I played in band on stage that we always used to say to each other, is that it's only a mistake if you look like you made a mistake, right? So even the most false note that you might hit, if you're just like, and then you go, oh, then obviously it's a mistake to everybody, because you look like you just made a mistake. But if you just go, and you just keep on playing, then the audience who has never heard your music before, they're not going to even notice, right? And if they did, they're going to forget about it 2 seconds later, mostly. It might make a bad impression on some. So one thing that we need to understand is that memory is different for different topics. It has different demands, it has different architecture, and it has different issues, let's just say, and it needs their different treatment. So therefore you have different sorts of demands to get in here and do that. So please do let me know if you have more specific questions about it. But the answer is partly in your question. So if you find that muscle memory in your hands works better but it doesn't last longer, then you just need to, or it's not long lasting, then you need to actually perform that piece longer, or memorize the sheet music, but then understand that you still have the debt of getting it into muscle memory, unless that your goal is just to be able to write out the sheet music from memory and not perform it. It just depends. Everything depends on the context. Adam says to Harold, I would list all of the subcomponents of code you need to memorize and then use a combination of major method and visualization. Create your own encoding system to interpret the coding language into your visualization and place this in your memory files. Good stuff. Practice, try. Chris is here, Natural Flow. Hello. He says, the other day I had a student create a story out of words as a pre-work for Memory Palaces. He was very capable of that, and I remembered the story 1 week later. Memory Palace felt blocked to find imagery. Great. Everybody's capable of doing this. A lot of people just don't sit down and do it. He felt more free to create with just linking a story. Jack says, make sure to hit control and save. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there are many paths for people to enter memory techniques. That's why I always say you need to have more than one teacher, because everybody can do memory techniques. You're just not going to resonate with every teacher under the sun. That's no problem, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't understand their learning preferences. So we got to put in learning preferences here. They don't understand what learning type they belong to, and so they lash out at the people that are teaching them instead of understanding. And that's because teachers don't know the learning types either, right? So what are the learning types? Well, a lot of people, they are people who want to know what something is as soon as possible. Other people, they want to know why something is important as soon as possible. Other people, they want to know how something works as soon as possible. And other people, they just want the action steps and I'm out of here, right? And there may be more, but that's certainly the big four that I've encountered many, many times in my life. And you got to try to please them all as soon as possible. But each person needs to find the teacher that satisfies that the best so that you can get it and that you can go. And how do you find that teacher? Stop expecting it to be one teacher, okay? And look for teachers who tell the truth. That's the ultimate thing. Because not all of them do, right? Not all of them are even aware of the truth. So, Alexander says, so in every station, is it possible to put more information? Yes, every station. How? Practice. Study the techniques and practice. There's so many ways to maximize stations, but it's a topic by topic basis, right? It has to do with your level of skill. So I need more information about what it is you're doing, how you're doing it, where you're at it. Adam says to Sandra, take a look at how to memorize poems. You create so that if you get stuck, you have a near reference point. To encode music, create a system such as colors for each note from A to G. Yeah, that's all good too. I mean, one of the things that a lot of music teachers talk about also is have memorize some songs and know what the notes are, right? So Stand By Me is a good one, right? If I listen to one song and I can match in my mind mentally Stand By Me, one note from Stand By Me, then I can figure out a great deal of what that other song is. Adam says to Alexander, you can link one item to another. Think of a station as an array instead of a variable, and you can only assign one value to. All right? Oh, Daniel fills me in. Aeolian, Dorian, and so forth. Yep. Those are some of the modes. Chris says, seems odd he felt more free as he was supposed to do the same thing in the Memory Palace and still come up with the story easily without the palace. Yeah, everybody's odd and strange, and you know, if you're going to do coaching, if you're going to have one-on-one teaching, then you're giving yourself the burden of helping that person find the path, right? And that's great. If you're willing to do that work, that's awesome. Jack says, story method. I don't know, this is complicated. Jumping up and down here. I'm losing you, Jack. Oh, Ben's here. Hola, Ben. ¿Cómo estás? Good to see you, Ben. Don't know if you're still here, but thanks for being here. Jack says story method does not need a memory palace. Au contraire. What one does not need does not equal lack of benefit. Jack says I prefer the Loki method. Look, the Loki method is a story method, okay? It's just you don't think of it that way. It is a story method. Everything's a story. It has a beginning and a middle and an end. Do you always start the story at the beginning? No, not necessarily. Okay, we got the Ionic, Mixolydian, Phrygian. Thank you, Daniel. Adams Jack says, I believe they work on something. Alexander says, thank you, Anthony, for your work and dedication. When are you going to publish this book? Alexander, I'm going to publish it when it's ready to go to that stage. And here's the thing, a lot of people put deadlines on themselves and so forth. I never do with well, actually, I shouldn't say never. Deadlines do work. I find they work when I do a joint venture. Like Jonathan Levy and I, we just did brandingu.academy. If you haven't been to brandingu.academy, let me just pop that link into our little chat here. You can go and check it out. And we put deadlines on ourselves because that's how you can get things done in a JV. But when I write, I just write every day until I'm done. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff where you don't know exactly how long you need the draft to sit there before you look at it again. I'm not really a big fan of reading myself, so I need to get someone else to read it, comment on it, and so forth. So I don't know when it will come out. Also, to tell you the truth, I might pitch this book to a publisher rather than publish it myself. I don't know yet. I just know I have an idea what it's going to be called, and I wanted to know what it's going to be. I know what it's about. Here's the mind map, right? But I wanted it to be even better. And so everything you guys are talking about, very good. Thank you. Keep on contributing what you'd like to see in this memory book, and it will most likely be in there. I can't make a 100% promise because you might not remember what you asked, and then you wouldn't recognize it if you saw it because you might have cryptomnesia, which I'll talk about in the book, actually. Adam says, story method is similar to Loki. You create a story out of the images. Yeah, well, look, the Memory Palace is a story because it has a beginning and a middle and an end. It's like, what happened on Magnetic Station 1? What happened on Magnetic Station 2? You tell yourself the story by using it, right? And it's more like a vignette, really. I think it's more like a vignette. So vignette is story, but it's very contained, and each magnetic station has a vignette on it, or it has multiple vignettes. So very, very good to think these thoughts, think them through. And by the way, when I say these things, think about them for yourself if they're true or not. Test them in your own practice. You don't have to, like, everybody wants the 10 commandments, right? But there may not be 10 commandments of memory. Maybe you come up with your own that work for you, and then what you'll find is you'll hit some information and you'll be like, oh wow, what I thought was working wasn't working. Better rethink those 10 commandments. Even the 10 commandments in the Bible had to be rethought, right? So there's no such thing as 10 commandments. Understand your memory, develop your memory, and understand that it's a journey for life. You'll always be developing your memory. Jack says, story method I found is a short term, whereas Loki Palace method is much better and recall is easier. Yes, the Memory Palace will always be the most profound for most people. 99.99% of people, it will be the most profound. But if you start to think of movies, for example, as memory palaces, then, and even if you place movies in your memory palaces, it might help you if you struggle with spatial memory. There's all kinds of things to play around with. So that's another note that I'm going to put in here, is three-part memory palaces. Three-part memory palaces based on three-part movie structure. So what I mean is, if you think about where the matrix opens, opening of matrix, right? And then maybe the chair pill scene. And then maybe where the interrogation scene, right? And let's say you have a memory palace that has 3 rooms, and you just associate mentally the opening of the matrix with one room, the pill scene with another room, and then the interrogation scene with the other room. Now you've got a stronger sense of your journey, if that's useful and helpful for you, because you'll be able to think linearly. Now, whether that's something that you want to adopt as a long-term strategy, I don't know, but it might help you get started. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be thinking too much about your memory palaces. That's too much cognitive load. The whole point of the memory palace and the story method and any method that you use, linking method, is to reduce cognitive load. It doesn't matter what you do, so long as you are reducing cognitive load and putting a primacy on the information. Because what you want to do is you want to harness the primacy and the recency effect using spatial positioning effect in order to give primacy and recency to every piece of information. That's what matters. And the faster you can do that, the less time you have to spend on repetition. So there is no rote learning involved here. There is the reduction of repetition to the smallest degree. And that's the game, right? That's the game. And it's the game that is so fun to play if you just understand it. So I think that that is really a powerful message that needs to be in the book. All right. What else we got here? Loki and Memory Palaces have built-in troubleshooting. Jack Adam says, yes, that is true. Everything has built-in troubleshooting if you study, implement, and practice. Chris says, I like them both for different things. Short-term story or link can work quickly. Yeah, I find just linking without a Memory Palace is usually a path for disaster, but it's to each individual person. Adam says, with the Memory Palace, I'm inserting, with the Memory Palace, you know when you skipped an image. That's true. So that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, it happened to me with cards this morning. I was just like, what the heck was that? But because I had a place for it, I had a place to meditate, so to speak, to contemplate, and I got it back, right? But if there would have been no place for it, it would have been like vaguely between this card and that card, which I guess for some people could be strong. I just don't know any serious person who's done anything of note that doesn't have a spatial element in it and very strong awareness of the spatial. Alexander says, how to use the sketchy medical images and the Memory Palace in combination. Go, Alexander, sketchy medical. Go and listen to my interview with Alex Mullen. He talks about that. So, not to pass the buck on him, but I don't use it. I'm not a medical student. Alex is. So I'll make sure there's a link in the book to the Alex Mullen interview. He's very kind in that interview. He shares so much with you all. If you haven't heard it, what are you waiting for? The Magnetic Memory Method podcast is filled with diamonds and gems and so forth. Some people tell me they don't even know there's a podcast. So you might notice on the site we're making some changes there. One of them is to make a big player that's like hard to miss, so people don't forget that there's a podcast. So Alexander, please do check that out. Jack says, I'm sort of missing the link here, but I love you guys chatting with each other. Excellent. You're essentially creating mini stories with the Loki method, so it is based on the story method. Exactly. But it's not based on the story method, and the story method isn't based on it. It's just one method. The more that you can understand, at least what the magnetic memory method is doing, is it's bringing all the methods together into one fell swoop so that you have the benefit of it all at the same time. That's what I'm working at. That's what this is all about. And if you can get that, and the modes will help you, then you're just gonna have a much easier time. And if you don't overthink it and just do it, then you'll have an easier time. And then you can spend the rest of your life thinking about it until you're blue in the face. But there's almost nothing to think about until you've actually done it and felt it, because it's something that's learned by doing, not by thinking. It's not like enlightenment. Enlightenment is something that you achieve by thinking. But memory techniques is done by actually using memory techniques, which I guess is a kind of thinking, but it's not a thinking about. It's a doing and then thinking about what was done and did it work or not. Adam says, but normally with the Loki method, each image is numbered, and that number is also an image, and that is linked to the target image. Not normally. There is no normal. There's what you do and how you do it. But yes, if you have a 00 to 99, then you could have every station numbered by default. You could have multiple bridging figures all over the place that'll help you. But let's avoid the word normal. Normal is what you practice for yourself, in order to develop a mnemonic style, and you're always ready to do something else in case the information challenges you and you need a fix, you need a way to work. Alexander says, what does magnetic stay for? Do you mean what does it stand for? So, meaning of magnetic. Got to put that in the book. I always make that classic mistake that that it's too obvious, but obviously it's not, and it's not anybody's issue. It's my problem. I need to explain it. But anything that's magnetic has two functions, right? It pulls and it pushes. So what we want in our memory palaces is to pull the information and stick it in place, hold it in place, fasten it in place through magnetic pull, while at the same time pushing away the unnecessary information. So pull and push. And what we want is for the right information to stay and the rest to leave. Because what ends up happening is like a lot of people, they can't focus, they can't concentrate, and it's because they're trying to get too much, or too much information is coming in. So it's also about attracting yourself to the most likely to work learning processes and pushing away the ones that don't. Oh yeah. So this is all about the magnetic modes. It's all about your consumption preferences, understanding them deeply. It's all about knowing your learning hierarchy and your learning type. And then knowing memory techniques so that you can have that wonderful staying power. Adam says troubleshooting means you can relax and not stress about forgetting information. Yeah, but troubleshooting also means actually when you have an issue and something's not working, you can fix it so that it does work. Chris says, wonderful association with the learning preferences. Thank you, Chris. Adam, can we put troubleshooting in the book? Sure. I have troubleshooting in all my books. But we'll make an extra big section. Teaching, Adam says, or sorry, was that Adam or someone else? Sorry guys, this chat is all over the place, jumping up and down. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, and if you have things you'd like to see in this book. So yeah, Adam says, teaching is also a great way of learning. If you know the magnetic memory method, you know I'm always telling you to teach. Teach to learn. There's multiple reasons to teach. You know, there's so many reasons to teach. And if you're not teaching memory techniques to other people, you're doing yourself a great disservice, but you're also doing a disservice to the world, because they need this help. And if you actually legitimately do it, then you need to be passing it on. Benjamin says, oh, sorry, I see just the full name here, and then I go, oh yeah, it's Ben. Ben, hey, thanks for this question. Are you thinking about a chapter on meditation and or brain health in the new book? Yeah, well, thanks for asking that, Ben. If you look on the mind map here, the brain is central here, and then here's a guy who's meditating. And I'm going to talk about the Buddha and Buddhism, the origins of the memory palace. You know, Lynn Kelly has the memory code, and she goes deep into Aboriginal traditions and so forth. But we also got to look at the actual tradition of meditation and the use of temples as memory palaces. Then there's the Stations of the Cross and so forth in Catholicism. And so I want to talk about Michael Roach and some of the meditations he teaches where he talks deliberately about using the palace in history. There's just a lot to be said. I've got a note here for Lynn Kelly. And then I got a lot of stuff about the brain chemistry that's involved in meditation that will help with memory, Kirtan Kriya, Satanama, etc., and a lot of the science around that. So thanks for asking that. There's a huge amount of that there. And, you know, it also ties to Matteo Ricci in many, many ways with language learning and his Chinese experience. So great. But just to be sure, I'll put it in my notes because I do talk about brain health as well. Make sure to have a link to Project Monkey Mind in there. Ben, if you don't recognize his name, because the full name is there, he was on one of the last live streams where we talked about keeping a meditation journal or a diary. Really great session. I think you may have been there. And he shared a lot, so go to Project Monkey Mind. Check that out on YouTube or on the internet, on his blog. Really great stuff. And about brain health in general, that's what this chemistry thing is all about. But we've also got a bunch of stuff about community, which is good for brain health, and sport, and there's going to be a whole thing about diet as well. So I think for diet, we might want to maybe flesh this out a little bit, because diet's really important. So I think I want to make sure that I have a nice fat carrot here. Carrot will be all about diet. And we'll make sure it has some nice green. Not exactly an artist, but you know what? It doesn't matter. You don't have to be an artist to mind that. Great. Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. This is going to be good. Okay. Alexander says, Anthony, do you talk also about how to study? If you do not, suggest someone who teaches learning strategies. You should also talk about it, in my opinion. Well, I do talk about how to study. This is what this is all about, right? I'm talking about how to study using memory techniques. If you want to study without memory techniques and you need help with that, then I suggest that you check out my blog post and podcast on note-taking. Also, I have a video on advanced mind mapping. This is a mind map for a book, which is not exactly advanced for a book, but I have one on if you want to remember more out of a book that you read, then that's there. Study at large. But I think my real focus is on actually using memory techniques. Well, it's just the best way to study, in my view, in my experience, if by study you mean the retention of knowledge and understanding based on what you've achieved and making connections in your mind from one piece of information to another. And here's why that's so important. If you haven't memorized it, and you haven't memorized it with great clarity and accuracy, then you can't roll it around in your mind to make the deep level connections that are possible. So I call that rhizomatic knowledge. And the reason why I call it rhizomatic knowledge is because a lot of knowledge is like a tree structure. They think of the roots and then the trunk of the tree and the branches and the leaves and all that stuff. Great, very linear, up, down, top, down. You need one thing to nourish the other, like you need water that is pulled up through the roots up into these distant leaves. But a rhizome, on the other hand, is something where bulbs can spontaneously appear in linear order, in horizontal order, in vertical order, in diagonal order, boom, 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 just all over the place. Much more profound and powerful of a structure. But that only comes from being able to deeply contemplate information in your mind because you remembered it without needing mind maps, without needing notes and so forth. The whole thing where you guys are asking questions and so forth, and I'm just like, bang, 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 here are my answers. Well, that's from deep knowledge that comes from contemplating things deeply. And the way that you get there is by memorizing it. And I think the fastest path, if you were to ask me about Aristotle on friendship or whatever, these topics that I did memory techniques for, Foucault or all these philosophers that I studied and so forth, I'm going to have a much deeper, richer access to it, not only because I studied it with memory techniques, but because I was able to compare and contrast in my mind from within the memory palace, which is another question that came up there. So compare, contrast. with memory palaces. It's not so much, it is that the memory palaces help you do it. Memory palaces are how you get information into long-term memory. This is the number one thing that needs to be stressed. A lot of people have this wrong conception of what a memory palace is all about. Memory palace is for long-term memory. It's not for eternally holding on to information inside of memory palaces. It's for that deep rhizomatic capability of making connections, being able to come back to information long after. This pertains to knowledge. It's a little bit different to music and language learning, but it's related to language learning very, very explicitly, because you want to be able to produce messages, communicate information with different forms, right? So if you don't remember a word, like in English, you'll have the ugly sister effect, or you won't be able to put your words together, but you'll still be able to innovate and create paths to communication of what it is that you want to say, right? And so you need to be able to do that with knowledge as well. You need to be able to do it with music sometimes. If you just forget a passage and you don't want to be like, stopping, don't want to look like you made a mistake, you want to just be able to insert some stuff, right? Now that's not necessarily the ideal in music, but it is the ideal in human knowledge. So in terms of learning strategies, I think the memory palace and memory techniques are the best that we're ever going to have and that we've got now. You can get into speed reading. I recommend Jonathan Levy for speed reading, and you can get the free trial at magneticmemorymethod.com/SL. And you'll see that there's a lot of resonance between the two trainings. But I think he would agree that it's about retention for contemplation and making connections. Pink Ribbon, oh, hello. Thanks for saying hello. Thanks for being here. Pink Ribbon says, what are the limits and limitations of memory palaces? Pink Ribbon, what are the limits and limitations? You tell me, because I don't think there are any. I really don't. Oh, there is one, and that is the stubborn student who won't sit down and make them and use them. I'm serious about that, in all love for people who just won't do it. Like, there's some obvious limitations to memory palaces, maybe. Like, for example, a memory palace is not going to go to the grocery store for you, and it's not going to vote for you. It's like just stuff like that. However, it could be used to help you remember to make better choices of what you buy at the grocery store. It could be used to help you make better choices when you're at the voting stall, because you're deeply informed about political concepts, economic concepts, and so forth. Very, very important to understand that even then, there's no limit. Daniel says, this is awesome. Wish I had recorded this, but gotta go. Don't worry, Daniel. I think I'll let the replay roll on this one, so you can always check it out later. All right. Wow. Thanks, everybody, for all these great things. Keep coming. If you have something that you would like to see in a book on memory improvement, let me know. If it's possible, we'll stick it in there. Trying to catch up here with some more chats. Really appreciate everything. Keep them coming. Chris says something cool would be to include some methods to expand imagination and not always fall back to similar images. Though mentioning that it comes over time could be enough. So, okay. Expand imagination and variation of images to avoid coming back to the same images. Well, so one, using the same image may be the solution. Two, have multiple memory palaces based on the alphabet. 3, have more than 100 to 99 POA, or at least a really robust PAO. some people call it PAOA, some people call it PAO. I'm not really that big of a fan of it, but since everybody uses it, we'll call it that. Every PAO is a modified PAO. Let's put it that way. So that's what I would suggest there. And then, yeah, just practice. And number 4, always have a learning project and use memory techniques. By continually feeding yourself more information, you will never run out of you'll never run out of imagery, because when you're constantly learning, you're giving yourself more imagery to draw upon. The more you learn, the more you can learn, because you have the more imagery to associate with. And learn because you have more imagery to associate with. Awesome. Great pointers. Let's see here. I love this stuff. Oh man. Chat thing is cool. Whoops. Whoa. Okay. Alexander. In case Anthony does not teach how to learn, I do. Also good books on basic learning strategies are How We Learn and also the User's Manual for the Brain and many more. Yeah, just as a thing, guys, if you are also a memory trainer and so forth, the thing to do is to not really market yourself on other guys' channels and stuff, but rather come and write a guest post for magneticmemorymethod.com. There's submission guidelines on the site and so forth, and that's the cool way to do it. Get invited on the show. How We Learn and also the User's Manual for the Brain and many more. Yeah, definitely feature other guys' stuff. That's always good. But the cooler way to feature oneself is to be a contributor to the site. Many of you have great knowledge, but I don't hear from you about guest posts or whatnot. The submission guidelines are there. We've had some amazing guest posts. There are some conditions on that though. But a thing about how to learn, and then that's the way you build your own email list and so forth. Really good way to mention that you have things to offer. Okay, and then you can also link to all the books under the sun. Adam says, Natural Flow, do you mean a way to use memory palace in such a way that it creates ideas instead of only storing them? Memory palaces will create ideas because you'll be able to compare and contrast things. In relation to expanding imagination, Adam says, using the memory palace as inspiration as a framework to develop your ideas. Definitely. Chris says, I sometimes use memory palaces to have some pointers for a direction to think about, like having stored some base creativity ideas, creative whack pack or basic flashcards with concepts. Very cool. Adam says, I've been trying to create a codified system of representing the components of ideas that I can change the shape of within the memory palace. I think this is along the line of what you're looking for. For example, it has been said that ideas are created from past ideas. Yeah, Northrop Frye once said, all poems come from other poems. Assuming that this is true, you could break ideas down into the most basic building blocks and arrange them. Yeah, well, that's kind of what we do, right? We're always, the great screenwriters, they understand the story elements, and then they, maybe not so much rearrange them, but they play with them and rearrange them at the same time. We're always doing this. Everything that comes into creation is then modified and recreated. Chris says, actually, I was talking about beginners, how they often either block or use the same story over and over and get bored or stuck, and maybe even mix up some images because it was in the same palace. Okay, well, I mean, people mixing up images and so forth is still, maybe the answer is to, and I talk about this on the Ugly Sister Effect podcast, the answer is to get better with your singular images. Adam says, I think it would come down to clearly defining your stations and not creating enough palaces. Exactly, Adam. People do not create enough memory palaces. They don't even begin to understand what memory palaces are because they haven't created enough of them. And then how can you define your magnetic stations properly if you haven't put in enough time to actually create enough? A lot of people, they want to be a master baker after baking one loaf of bread. It doesn't work that way. Now the irony is you can become really, really good with these techniques really, really fast. But you're going to be doing it by creating more than one memory palace. And I suppose you can become a good baker really fast as well, as long as you make more than one loaf of bread. Make a couple mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and so on. Pretty simple. Alexander says, I have to memorize things into memory palaces for an exam, and then after 10 days, I have to put other subjects into memory palaces. How can I make the first information long-term if I have to delete them in 10 days? Why would you have to delete them? Just make more memory palaces, Alexander. It's pretty simple. I think that one never has to delete anything from memory palaces. If you want to clean out memory palaces, maybe I better have a chapter on cleaning memory palaces. First of all, delete is not the right word. Never delete. You can leave them fallow for a while, or you can imagine cleaning them out, or you can do the better thing, which is actually use the ghosts, as they call them. I think that's probably the more profound thing. Don't delete things. Just create memory palaces. Alexander says, for the anatomy exam, I had at least the necessity of 500 magnetic stations. Nowadays, I don't have enough memory palaces. If you don't have enough memory palaces, make more. Make more. It's so simple. Adam says you can maximize space by linking several items into a story or image. With linking method, I need 500 Loki. You don't need necessarily that many. What you need is to create more and understand how you can reuse them, or you need to understand that 500 is nothing. 500 is nothing. It's so simple to come up with 500. If you have an alphabet system, you're already on the go. You're already there. Pink Ribbon says, watch the replay tomorrow. Thank you very much for your answer, and to the others too. Have a nice continuation. Thank you, Pink Ribbon, for being here. All right, if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know what you would like to see in a memory improvement book. Got the mind map here. Some really great contributions. I think we're going to talk about Simonides, of course. Simonides. Lots of ways to pronounce that name. We're going to talk about Zup and numbers. Alexander says, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Alexander. Good questions. Just create more memory palaces. If you don't have the magnetic memory method worksheets and so forth, use them if they're helpful as a guide. And then once you're done, create some more. Andy's here. Andy, thank you for being here. Thanks for saying hello. Covered a lot of territory already. Working on a new book and just asking what needs to be in this new book. Got the memory palace, or sorry, the mind map here. Well, there's not such a big difference between memory palaces and mind maps. Adam says, I have at estimate over 400 buildings, 100 streets, 8 parks, 4 vehicles as memory palaces, and that doesn't include the virtual ones from video games. Well, there you go. I mean, you put in the time, you just have an abundance. Oh yeah, that reminds me. I've got to put memory palace scarcity. People have memory palace scarcity, and you know why? It's because they're not creating memory palaces. Every day I have an opportunity to create memory palaces. Every day. It never ends. Rachid's here. Hey Rachid, thanks for saying hello. Here's my mind map for the new book. If you want to see something in the new book, let me know. We've got a whole pile of notes I wasn't expecting. Some of the things I think I would have covered naturally anyway, but now I can really dedicate them to you, for you. This book will be dedicated to you. Now I'm pretty good at remembering things, but just in case. Dedication to my YouTube live siblings in memory. Is that a good one? Maybe we can come up with something better than that. Siblings in memory? I don't know. You're not allowed to say brothers these days anymore. Brothers and sisters. Actually, I am. My brothers and to my YouTube live brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters in memory. To hell with political correctness. Rakit says, what's the new book about? It's about... Okay, well, I'm just going to keep the title private for now. But it's about memorizing names. It's about the health that you need to have a brain that works properly. It's about practicing memory techniques. It's about music, for memory techniques for music. It's about a real understanding of music. I'm going to talk about Roger Scruton. It's about repetition and difference, and the difference between the sameness and the difference of sameness, so that you don't get into, I mean, you guys are also, talking about variation and so forth, but it's about understanding that sameness is always difference. There's no such thing as the same. Now, some of this is maybe gonna not be in the book, but I really wanted to help people with this ghosting thing or uniqueness thing, and repetition is always difference, okay? It's very important. Then we're gonna talk about language learning. Talk about Matteo Ricci. I'm working on the Matteo Ricci translation now. I'm going to talk about medication. Medication being something really quite bad for a lot of memories out there, but my own history with memory techniques helping me through the brain fog that the medication was creating. I'm going to talk about Robert Langs. I'm going to talk about how his dream therapy that I went through, psychotherapy, helped me develop my memory because of dream recall. All the tools that I learned there. Again, maybe not all the stuff will be in the book, but it's a mind map to unlock. Then I'm going to talk about meditation and memory. I'm going to talk about the Buddha tradition, or at least the yogic tradition, let's say. Michael Roach has some stuff. We're going to talk about Advaita Vedanta and memory. We'll talk about Gary Weber, Happiness Beyond Thought. Talk about Lynn Kelly's The Memory Code. Talk about brain chemistry. We're going to talk about creativity. We're going to talk about mind mapping. We're going to talk about Tony Buzin's Butterfly. We're going to talk about memorizing facts. We're going to talk about the importance of community, the championships. We're going to talk about forums, memory forums. We're going to talk about TED Talks. Talk about Barbara Oakley and learning how to learn. We're going to talk about sports, right? We're going to talk about Dominic O'Brien. We're going to talk about acting. We're going to talk about climbing. We're going to talk about Nelson Dellis. We're going to talk about Alex Mullen. We're going to talk about martial arts. We're going to talk about rowing, Tony Buzin's rowing, how all this relates to memory. We're going to talk about the katas in karate and all that stuff. We're going to talk about Bruce Lee. We're going to talk about Walter Ong, which brings us back to Lynn Kelly. We're going to talk about the Roman orators. We're going to talk about speeches. We're going to talk about Simonides of Kos. We're going to talk about Bruno. We're going to talk about Gary Small. We're going to talk about Christine Tal. We're going to talk about Stephen Kosslyn, mental imagery. We're going to talk about Plato, Aristotle, Thales, and Megaston Topos Pantagar Kori, the most important sentence ever uttered in the history of humanity. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to talk about all the things that we talked about on this chat. So go back through the replay and you will check it out. Andres says, great channel. Thanks, Andres. If you're not subscribed to this channel, hit subscribe, hit that bell. The bell is what gets you notified to when we go live like this. I kind of had the idea that we just type the whole book live. It's probably going to be boring as hell, but maybe we can do some more sessions like this. Jack says, in what formats will the book be available? Kindle, paperback? I don't know yet, Jack. Good question, though. I just mentioned Gary Weber. He has a new book out. Oh, it's really great. It's so great. But he refuses to put it in Kindle and ebook. And I asked him about it, and he refuses to put it in audiobook also. I asked him about it, and he said one of the reasons why is that so few people take action on anything these days anymore. And the ebook and stuff revolution in his mind is reducing the amount of people who take action because of he didn't say this, but I think it's probably from the hunter-gatherer syndrome. And that's one of the reasons why I kept the memory connection in print only, available directly from me. And I'm quite shocked by how many people ordered it. And I'm shocked, Jack, that you haven't ordered it. So I kind of I think that there's a wrongness to what Gary Weber is saying, but there's also a rightness to it. Because why would you want your book to be in the hands of people who aren't serious enough to get a physical copy? When we know, memory experts know, that you're much more likely to remember what's in the book from print, right? It's a very strange paradox. Then there's the 80-20 rule. So I don't know yet the answer, but I'm probably going to seek perhaps a traditional publisher, and then they will decide. I'm not going to bang my head against the wall with traditional publishers, though, because usually they have all kinds of rules and guidelines about what the book should be like in order to achieve mass appeal for a mass audience. I think we have enough mass appeal books for mass audiences out there when it comes to memory. They help certain people, and they don't help others. Whatever. We'll see. I'm not sure yet, but it'll certainly be available to the people who want it and are willing to do whatever it takes to get it. But I don't know yet. I'm very sympathetic to Gary Weber. I think in his case I disagree, but he's right at the same time. It's a paradox. It's a paradox. Let me know if you have any thoughts about it. I'd be delighted to hear what you think about the whole digital amnesia problem, digital dementia. Is it really true? Like, what's the last ebook that you read that was educational based where you took action on it? And what's the last physical book that you read that you took action on? And did you value one over the other? I'd really love to know. Alexander asks, Anthony, how many items do you suggest to put in every station in order to not make confusion? Alexander, you're asking great questions, but you're asking questions that only your practice can answer. You start with one. You master one. Master a memory palace with 10 stations, 10 pieces of information, then scale from there. Challenge yourself. And if you get confused, scale down. I know that that's a frustrating answer, perhaps, but it's the truthful answer. It's the honest answer. It's the answer that will really help you the most if your ears are open to hear it. There is no answer except for the answer you make yourself through your own practice. You've got to do this, but just start with the most common sense thing. Start with one. Then you will have it all. You'll have it all a lot faster than you think is possible. Great question, though. It's a great question. It's just that it's a question that only you can answer. But I'm going to put that in the book anyway. How many pieces of information per magnetic station? Answer. Master one. Then scale up. Good. We won't forget. Adam says, I like how accessible you make yourself. Not many people doing this kind of thing. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, Adam, well, we had a little correspondence earlier. I won't get into it, but here's how it works. I hope you understand. And substance matters. And substance points to substance. Don't skip the basics, the fundamentals. Alexander says, agrees with Adam. Yeah, and you know, the number one thing is the way you keep this going is you support it. You can support it with thumbs up, you can support it with comments, you can make sure you're a subscriber, you can make sure you're downloading the podcast, make sure you're sharing this with your peeps and your friends. If the masterclass is something for you, you can support it by getting the masterclass. You know, a lot of people, they get the masterclass, they tell me I got it just because I want to support your work. I think that that's very nice, but get it because you want to learn more about memory and understand that this project is trying to give you the most honest and authentic approach that there is with real training that has no end, right? Because that's what memory training is. It's a lifelong proposition. You want to enter this dojo? Then stay a while and be a supporter of it. And actually understand that the truth is being spoken here. The truth is being spoken because this is only the beginning, right? This is only the beginning. So many other memory trainers, they won't even so much as mention another book that you should go and read, right? Because they want it all. They just want you as their student and so forth. Run from those people. Learn from them, but run, because they're not telling you the truth. The truth is you need to study lots of memory teachers. You need to constantly fuel yourself so that you're asking yourself the right questions to guide yourself in your own practice. you don't, some people, they call me sensei and they call me teacher, and that's great. It's a great compliment and so forth. But you're the teacher. I'm trying to make you your own guru of memory, because you're the only one who can be. You're the only one who can be. How do you do that? You read, you study, you invest in yourself, you practice, you show up. You show up. I hope that helps. I mean, I don't want to get too mystical about it, but there is truth about memory training, and then there are illusions. And a lot of people are not telling you the truth. The truth is that you are your own memory teacher. You're the only one. You teach yourself by studying, implementing, and practicing. And you do it by directing your memory activities at goals that will actually make a difference in your life, that will improve your life. Adam says to Alexander, try to create a scene instead of an image. This will help you reduce the number of stations needed. But like Anthony said, creating memory palaces is the best solution, always. Excellent. Adam says, but that said, efficiency is the main aim here, so fit what you can where you can without compromising accuracy. Yeah, that's true, but I would also say compromise accuracy so that you know what happens when you make mistakes and how to fix it. Rachid says, I mean, a lot of people, they hold on. You've got different things, right? You've got volume, you've got duration, you've got accuracy. And if you hold on to one of them too tightly, you're missing the exercise of the others. So you want balance. You want balance. Accuracy sometimes has to go. You have to make mistakes sometimes. And if you really get comfortable and relaxed, accuracy becomes less of an issue, and you'll get things back at different times, and you'll work on accuracy. You'll bring up all your levels. You'll constantly understand that progress is not like this, but it's like this. The other day I had an interesting situation. I was interviewed on a podcast for the first time, actually, that I can recall anyway. Someone challenged me on the podcast. They threw a bunch of names at me, and I probably told you this already, maybe some of you, but they asked me some names, or they gave me some names, and I recalled them all, but as I was going back through them, I said, wait, I'll come back to that one. That name was Mary, and it was the third station, and for some reason, Mary just didn't pop, and I went on with the rest of the names, and then he gave me a clue. He said, and I said, now, let's talk about the one that I missed, and I was like fishing for it a little bit. I made a slight error. I didn't make a slight error. I just needed a bit more time. And you'll see this if you ever see the live demonstrations. Harry Lorraine, I've seen it with lots of guys. They'll say, I'm going to come back to you. And they just go on, and it'll come to them, right? But what happened in this situation is he said, it was the religious thing, wasn't it? Right? Because he knows that I'm essentially, I wouldn't say I'm an atheist, but quite skeptical of all religious things. And so I said, oh, Mary, that's what it was. And I said, you shouldn't, you gave me a clue, And this is what happens with my wife all the time. I get my new Chinese vocabulary and phrases and so forth. She cannot stop herself from feeding me clues, which means my memory doesn't get the proper exercise that it needs. And that's an example of, if you push after accuracy too much, you'll always be disappointed, because there's always either a mistake or a lapse or something that needs a bit massaging. It happened to me this morning with cards, where the King of Spades, it was just like, but I was like, okay, forget about accuracy. I got all the rest. Now just relax and try and figure it out. And there's different ways to figure it out. One of which is just to give it a little bit of time. The other is, well, what cards wasn't it? And then you'll find it that way. Or you just, there's different solutions. But accuracy, don't make accuracy the Holy Grail. Don't make anything the Holy Grail. Just make, if you have to make something the Holy Grail, make study, implementation, and practice the Holy Grail. That's what it should be. That you should do that. Andres is here. Thanks for being here, Andres. Hit that thumbs up if you're just joining us. Let me know what you should think should be in a new memory improvement book. Andres asks about the PEG system again. What do I think about it? I suggest you go back and watch the replay, because we covered the PEG system and what I think about it in a great deal, or check out the new book. Wow. So many great discussions here. I really appreciate it, guys. So Rachid asks lots of new interesting ideas. Love them already, but can't wait to get my hands on the book. When's it going to be available? I don't know. As I mentioned, I'm going to potentially seek a publisher on this. If you guys keep supporting this channel and supporting this work, then we can maybe draw more attention to a real big publisher that'll get it in airports and bookstores around the world. I'm not entirely sure that's a good thing, actually, but we'll see. Jack says, I'm not aware of the book you mentioned. Jack, I'm really surprised. I've seen you on lives before where I was holding the memory connection in my hand. I also agree with you totally. I think the paperback is always ready. I love to hold the book in my hands anyways. Well, Jack, maybe you just listened and that's why you didn't see it, but the memory connection is available at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. And if it's for you, we'll put it in the mail right away. Okay. So many people have the memory connection, it's almost hard to keep up with. And I might not do a second printing because we're starting to get close to the end. And it was just an experiment. And I'm really so excited about it, actually. Andy says, what about what I wish I did when I first started mnemonics topic? That's a cool one, Andy. Thank you for that. Chapter. What I wish I had done when I started. Great. So 1, more memory palaces, for sure. 2, I would say better health. 3, more sleep. 4, better meditation practice. And 5, maybe I started with German earlier, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Didn't really have the reason to at that time. Rasmus is here. Anyway, I'll think about that, Andy. Great suggestion. Hello, Anthony. How many times do you think one should repeat a lesson? Let's say a chapter in a psychology book or a lesson in a language book. Good question. I'm going to write that down. Well, here, look, if we break things down to first principles and the ideal outcome, you want to read it once and remember it all, right? Isn't that the ideal outcome? Read it once, remember it all. The likelihood of that ideal outcome happening, however, is unlikely. So what you need to do is create a reading and memorization strategy and then work on improving it. So that's going to be up to you to figure out, but you can work towards that ideal depending on the context. So depends on the context. Is there an exam involved, for example? Do you need to be bulletproof? If you need to be bulletproof, how many items do you need to be bulletproof for? Have you gone and looked at the previous exam? Because they're usually available. Have you talked with the professor? Discussed with professor, etc. Like, I need to know more about the context and so forth, and you need to know more about the context too. Strategy for exams is almost its own thing. Now, you didn't mention exams, but I'm assuming there's an exam lurking here if it's a psychology book. For language, you're going to develop your own style. It's going to shift and change based on what it is that it is, right? Like, not all vocabulary is going to be used equally. Not all phrases are going to be used equally. So then you need to think about how much long-term retention is needed, what that means for you, and what you need in your mnemonic experience and style to get it bulletproof. Adam says, what? But the mistakes are where you find experience, and experience will help you develop in ways that shortcuts won't. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned shortcuts, because I often like to say that the real shortcuts are found, I should say the real and the authentic shortcuts. The authentic shortcuts are found along the way, along your journey. Look, I don't want this book to be like a bunch of feel-good, rah-rah-rah, cheerleading mumbo-jumbo. I want it to have real memory techniques, but at the same time, I want it to actually tell the truth about what people need to do, which is to study, implement, and practice, right? And not look for shortcuts. Andy says, MMM is a lifestyle. Exactly. So I would just say memory training is a lifestyle. And if you use the magnetic memory method, it is the one that is most devoted to comprehensive memory training in all aspects of life. I'm going to write that down. Why? Well, because your brain is dying a slow death as you live, right? It's like lifelong brain health. Preemptive strikes. Preemptive strikes against Alzheimer's, dementia, and everyday stupidity. Everyday stupidity, we are all 100% prey to at all times. Stupidity, as the philosopher Gilles Deleuze said, is the only thing worthy of hatred. I gotta dig up that quote. Deleuze quote on hatred for stupidity. That should be the quote opening that. I think it was in his book on Francis Bacon. I love that book. In any case, that's what this has got to be. Okay, so Adam says the mistakes are where you. Oh, we got that one. Anthony, could you also touch on the subject of nootropics, their benefits, hazards, and whether they will actually help you over time? So, chapter on nootropics. Yeah, we can do that. Andy agrees. Yes, nootropics. Rachid, yeah, I would also like to hear your opinion on nootropics. Here's the thing, right? Do you want to be reliant on a pill? That's an attachment, right? One of the best lessons I ever got about meditation was do not make meditation something you rely on in order to feel good, in order to be balanced, right? Same thing with nootropics. Don't make your focus, your awareness, your clarity, your ability to show up as your best self reliant on substances, right? I like coffee as much as the next coffee lover, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, but you don't want to make your life quality reliant on coffee. Is coffee a nootropic? I don't know. But look, I'll tell you something in my experience. This year is going to be the 6-year anniversary of doing this work full time. I can't tell you the amount of times people have approached me to advertise this or that memory supplement on their podcast, or on my podcast, on my blog, and so forth. And I always say, no. No matter how much money they throw at me, no matter what deals they wing at me, 50% commissions, yada yada, I won't do it because it's a lie. It's a lie. No science I've ever seen, and I'm happy to look at any science that contradicts this, but no science I've ever seen demonstrates better than a 0.02 verbal memory advantage. 0.02% verbal memory advantage. I ask you, dear friends, what the hell is that? What the hell is that? It's nothing. You can get a better verbal memory advantage from drinking water. I hydrated my brain. Already more verbal. It's just stupidity. It's dumb. And I have a hard line about it. I have a hard line about it because we are sold garbage all the time. When we know all the best science in the world tells us, we know it beyond a doubt, that if you just eat well, you get rid of preservatives, right? You do an elimination diet to weed out the potential of any food sensitivities that you may have. Do a rotation diet to really nail it down. You don't need supplements. You just don't need them. So that's my take on that. I hope that that's not too hardcore. And what can I say? I mean, I've tried them here and there and so forth, and it's just not my deal. It's not my deal. If it's your deal, cool. But if it's, I just don't think it's an authentic path ever. I can't imagine it's authentic. But you know, I'm happy to see arguments the other way around. Adam says, by learning from multiple people, you will find information from different levels of reference and resolution. This means that you will get multi-level understanding of the techniques. So true and necessary to get a higher level of understanding things. That's right. That's right. You know, you've got to just read as much as you can about a topic. Binge. But apply what you read. Contemplate it. Memorize it and contemplate it, and then put it towards your practice. That's how you'll get the benefits. Rasmus says, I agree with the lack of action in the digital age. One of the things that caused this for me was that my mind can't distinguish between imagination and action, so my mind tended to think of it as completed. The mind confuses thinking with action, so I found Whoop by Gabriel Oettingen as the best way to deal with this outcome obstacle plan to deal with the obstacle. Okay, I haven't heard that name, but I'm going to write that down just to go and check it out. I assume that OE is umlaut O in his mother tongue. See you, Adam. Thanks for being here. That was great. Erasmus says, about the question I asked, psychology is indeed an exam. Psychology is indeed for an exam. Also, it is my passion. I want it to be much more than an exam about the language. I want it for emigration, so I want to become like a native. Okay, so look, in video 3 of the Magnetic Memory Method Master Plan, I talk about textbooks in great detail. You'll want to take the whole master plan. And it's about creating knowledge. Knowledge. And you do that through a particular process, which you either discover on your own or with some training. And I do indeed hope that you will avail yourself of much training. And there's much to be had. So that's great. Rachid says, see, Adam, great insights from your part. Yeah, Adam has some great stuff to say. And really cool that he was here. So, memory is such a great topic. If you haven't added your 2 cents to what could be in this new book, please do so now. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. Happy to keep going a little bit because I promised Samit's here. Hi, Samit. Hello. Let me know if you would like something to be in this book that I may not have considered including. And hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. You might be wondering why that thumbs up thing means so much to me, but here's the thing. We want you to take action with the training, right? And it's like a micro step. So if you're not even willing to hit a thumbs up button, woohoo! There's a lot of work yet to be done, isn't there? No, I'm kidding, but it is a great way of telling Google that you like this particular content, telling YouTube that you like it, and helping support this work, letting it grow, sharing this stuff with your friends, and all kinds of things. It really matters. The computers are making decisions on behalf of all of us based on user metrics, it's called, engagement metrics. And so the more of those that they see, the more they favor things. So if you like this, if you're benefiting from this, one of the best things you can do is be commenting on the website, commenting on the YouTube videos, primarily the website though. That actually helps more. I know YouTube people like to stay on YouTube. I understand that, but that's not necessarily the best way to help the people that you like. Go to their websites and so forth. By the way, some of you guys weren't here at the beginning. You probably didn't see my Razzmatazz keyboard. This is what I'm doing to write the book. And I promised I was going to write the opening words for the first draft of this. But keep your suggestions coming if you have any on what you would like to see in a memory improvement book. And I don't want to miss anything. Rachid says, can you talk about aerobic exercises for the brain to preserve it from aging? Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm not sure what you would call aerobic exercise, but there are 3 flow yoga movements that I do, asanas, I guess you call them, that I'm going to talk about. Got those coming up actually on a YouTube video soon. So yeah, we can talk about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is change, right? Keeping up with change. I think we need a chapter on keeping up with change. So that's not on the mind map, but what do you think about that? keeping up with change. I know that there's a few ways that I struggle with that personally. It's not so much a memory demand, but it's like something that was working so well, because Google or whoever makes a decision, then they expect the entire world to run around catching up with their decisions, right? So there's an attitude issue. Attitude when things like Google change. And then there's just the memory demand, which is easily solved when you have a memory strategy. Memory is less challenged when you have a strategy for it. So that's one thing I want to keep, or I want to put in there. Just going through all my notes here. A lot of people ask about things like financial trading and so forth. That's basically just numbers. I mean, I'm not an expert in it. If you know any memory experts who also do financial trading, maybe they can speak to it. Also, is anybody here also a writer? Adam just left, sorry, I meant to bring it up, but one of the things I like to do is, I call it entrainment, and when I write books, I always write listening to the same album every time. And I write from the beginning of the album to the end and just stay on it. It's really helpful technique. Rachid says, yeah, it's really good to talk about because we tend to be attached to our old selves in our lives. Yep, absolutely. So we're going to talk a lot about visual improvement and so forth. That's just another note. So increasing all the senses through the modes, all the memory senses, let's call them memory senses, through the magnetic modes. Of course, we've got to talk about SIP and DOC. What about using the MMM for increasing focus from Andy? Thank you, Andy. That's a good one. Yeah, well, I mean, basically, if you put together a dedicated memory practice, you're going to have small blasts of focus. So imagine you had some cards like this, and they each had 2-digit numbers, and you just pick, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got 10 of them, and you're going to memorize these numbers in that order. Well, then you're going to have a practice of focus. The actual memorization is going to give you that focus, but I could see that we would have increasing focus through preparation, increasing focus through dedicated practice, timed practice maybe, and then increasing focus through dedicated recall. So for example, what I mean by dedicated recall is when I did my card practice this morning, after a few minutes I went back and I wrote out the cards that I remembered. And that takes focus. Like, you have to dedicate yourself to actually writing it out and not stopping till you're finished, right? And it was interesting because I had been off practice because of the flu for a couple weeks. And I did fine. I got it all. I was 100% accurate. There was just this one card that for some reason I couldn't get to pop. I had to do a bit of elimination to figure it out. But it wasn't the elimination that helped me figure it out. I was just focusing. So, story of flu with cards, King of Spades. And I made a discovery too that maybe my King of Spades image isn't the greatest. And one of the reasons why is because my spiritual journey, let's say, has changed a lot over the years. So I'm not as attracted to that character that represented the King of Spades. So I maybe need to find a new one. Enemy, which is Wyndham Lewis, maybe needs to be changed. Maybe that will help people also to understand that you got to change these things sometimes. Great suggestion. Thank you, Andy. Other ways of creating focus for rehearse info in memory palaces during meditation. Practice recall during speaking sessions with foreign language speakers. Practice recall by remembering credit card numbers while shopping online, and so on. I can come up with tons of stuff, I'm sure. Thank you again, Andy. Really great suggestion. Sumit says, while tackling subjects like economics, there are so many concepts to visualize and stick into the memory palace. So it may be a good idea to have contents about how to tackle these type of subjects from students' point of view, as in for an exam preparation. All right, exam preparation. Maybe a chapter on that. I don't know, this book is starting to seem like it's going to be like an 8,000 page book here. You know, the thing is too, right, is that some people will think, wow, this is great, and other people say, this is all too much, and other people say, there's nothing here. Nothing new here under the sun, blah, blah, blah. I always think that's so funny. How are they even qualified to know that there's nothing new in that book? We need to get back trained critics. I've often thought this. I heard David Cronenberg say that, actually. He was talking about one of the problems with, you know, the internet is so forth, is everybody's got an opinion now, and their opinion is so persuasive that no one's seeing anything good anymore because all the unqualified people are the tastemakers. They're not even qualified to have an opinion. Now, that's not entirely true. In the film world, I think it's maybe not as big of a problem as he makes it out to be. Maybe it is. Anyway, but it is definitely a strange trend where we are so influenced by commentators on the quality of content who haven't got even the remotest qualification to make recommendations that influence the masses. That said, maybe they are the most qualified, I don't know, because it is the masses, after all, who are reading, and you get the government you elect, right? So it's maybe time to go back to judging books by their covers instead of by their reviews. Rasmus says, do you think SRS is the best strategy for memorizing? I personally think it can take a lot of time, especially for vocabulary learning. No, I think SRS is the worst. The worst. Chapter on why SRS is the worst. And I'll have in parentheses for many people, because it's not the worst for everybody. Some people really get it, but they know how to use it properly. Ollie Richards has great training on how to use SRS properly. I'll stick him, Ollie, I'm going to stick you in the book. No, I'm going to mention you in this book on that, because you have good stuff on that. I wonder if my friend Bali has finished his stuff. He's got a course, but it's in Hungarian. Anyway. But yeah, no, Rasmus. SRS is just not for most people. And the rumors of its success are greatly exaggerated. Or so it seems to me. Okay. Having a lot of fun. Enjoying everything. So, a lot of people, they have stumbling blocks with the major method. I don't know why. Let's see if we can solve it. Who here has the major method under their belt already? I've never quite understood the difficulty in it. But you know, I have that, Steven Pinker talks about the problem of expertise as a problem. It makes you have a hard time having empathy for learners. So I got to figure out a better way to teach the major method so that people don't struggle with it. I don't know, I just got it so fast. Rahid, what's SRS? Oh, thanks Rasmus for answering. Yeah, spaced repetition system. But I think Okay, so spaced repetition system, there's Leitner boxes, which are spaced repetition systems, and that's different than how SRS is usually used. We usually now use SRS, spaced repetition software, not spaced repetition system. So there's a difference. If you're making the spaced repetition system yourself, then we're talking about something that matters. If we're talking about spaced repetition software where you're relegating the repetition to machines, then we're talking about cancer, brain cancer for many, many people. Not all people, if you use it well. But how do you use it well when it actually encourages you to lie, right? So a lot of them, they'll say, people will say yes when the answer is no, right? And some of the systems will have a 1 to 5. How well did you remember this, 1 to 5? First of all, that doesn't really work for much information. It's not that easy. And the second thing is people will lie. They won't be honest. They won't tell the truth to the machine. So what's the use of the software making decisions on how often you're supposed to be exposed to the information when people just aren't honest? And it's impossible to be honest with them because you often don't know. You often just don't know the right answer. And you're often using it at the wrong time. So, difference between software and self-created system, Leitner. Got to put on my... Oh, did you hear the recent episode? Sorry, don't mean to point at you, but I was just reminding myself. Christopher Huff was on the podcast yesterday. If you haven't listened to the most recent Magnetic Memory Method podcast, listen to it. He's got good ideas there. He's talking about Leitner boxes, and he has this like modified PAO with the presidents that he's using for Chinese tones, or he used at the time anyway. Really great interview, and he sings this song that anybody can learn. You should check it out. I really, really like that episode. And crazy enough, it's got like only 2 shares or something. Probably the best Magnetic Memory Method episode ever. No shares. 2 shares. Crazy. What's wrong with the world? Go there. Go and share it. It's the most recent episode. It's called Stoic Secrets for Using Memory Techniques with Language Learning. Maybe I should have come up with a better title. I don't know. Rakit says, why is it considered the worst for learning vocabulary? Well, I just mentioned some of the reasons why. There's the honesty principle, self-reporting. Do you trust yourself to report properly to a machine, to a robot? Maybe. It's up to you. I mean, again, I'm not saying that it can't work. Self-reporting. And then, of course, the whole thing is that these softwares are embedded in digital media and devices designed to distract you. You're in an environment of twitchiness from tab to tab, from app to app. How are you supposed to concentrate? You're not isolated from the machine that's designed to distract you. It's insanity. It's insanity. So how can you have that full focus? How can you ever have that full focus? Rasmus says, what do you mean by correct use? If the learner doesn't answer honestly, what can she expect? Yeah, that's part of the correct use. But also, the other problem with using them correctly is that you're not using the language in conversation, or you have the illusion of conversation you're not having. And one app in particular is feeding you sentences that no one even uses about red cats that drink beer. So, is it fun? Sure. But is it learning? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Sumit says, I think one disadvantage with SRS is the number of words increases. It becomes difficult to repeat. Yeah, another thing, you're encouraged to add more words before you have a successful and meaningful absorption rate that has gone into use. Writing, speaking, listening, reading, etc. You know, like, it's not just about language learning. The big five is important across the board. Oh man, I hope this book just doesn't turn into a giant session for kvetching over everything. But maybe that's what we need, right? We need a book where someone's going to kvetch over everything and try to get at the truth, which is you create memory palaces, you use them, and then you rehearse what's in the memory palaces, and then you explain to others what you did through the big five of language learning: reading, writing, speaking, and listening, or any learning, right? That's what I'm advocating. This is the strategy. It's the strategy that's been used for thousands of years. It's the strategy that will be used for thousands of years if we can preserve it from the machines. Rasmus agrees, distraction, definitely an issue. So Rachid says, how can we use SRS for better effective vocabulary learning, or is there another strategy? Look, a memory palace is a spaced repetition system if you're using it properly. And this is taught in my free course, so if you haven't taken it, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Should be as clear as a bell. Yeah, you got to read the worksheets. Yes, you need to watch the videos. But if one does that, you will be free. You will be free to learn and remember whatever you want with the most profound strategy ever created. I've refined it a little bit through my own practice, through talking with thousands of students of mine over the years, through receiving thousands upon thousands of emails and questions and answering them. I've talked to dozens of memory experts. I don't know how many memory champions, but a fair amount. I've spent hours of my life hanging around with Tony Buzan and Phil Chambers, and I spent hours of my life hanging around with Dave Farrell. I've talked with Nelson Dellis, grilled him deep on the real issues, the real challenges that people have when they're really on the path. Talked with Alex Mullen, talked with Mark Shannon. I've had Mark Shannon, spent hours and hours with Mark Shannon just jamming on these issues. And Ollie Richards as well. He's a mnemonist of his own kind. Jonathan Levy, I've spent many hours just jamming on these topics. And all I can tell you is I've translated that into a message that equals what it equals, which is that if you just do the fundamentals, the things that have lasted thousands of years, and you fuel yourself with the best possible education from the people who actually use them, these techniques themselves, and there are people who do, and you constantly enable yourself to see new perspectives, and you constantly show up to the techniques, you constantly implement, and you just study what happens when you use them and refine your own practice, and you become your own memory guru, you will be free to learn and remember anything that you want. And if you just stop relegating it to machines, just stop it. Stop it until that you've mastered it for yourself, then start to practice with machines more. And then you can see, oh, okay, so if I'm gonna use a machine, I still should actually memorize it on my own, and then maybe the machine can do some of the heavy lifting, but not relegate it to machines. That's just, maybe it works for some people, but no serious person that I know who uses spaced repetition software or teaches spaced repetition software as a core lesson, not a single one of them, and there may be some who do. I'm totally willing to admit that there may be things I don't know, and there certainly are. But when they talk about spaced repetition software, using it, they're talking about it intelligently, wisely, and they're basically talking about it in a way that's very, very coherent with what I'm talking about, just from a different angle. Rasmus says, true, I rarely use words alone. I learn in sentences, but some days I had several thousand reviews, so I stopped using SRS. Yeah, people just put in several thousand reviews. Is that realistic? No. What's realistic is one memory palace, 10 words, 10 phrases, and showing up consistently enough to get that into long-term memory through reading, writing, speaking, and listening. That's how all the masters do it. That's how you're going to do it if you want these results. You're going to do it one way or the other. There's no special magical fantasy path that anybody gets around. It's just which is the way that's fun for you, which is the way that reveals to you the truth about your memory, so that you fall in love with your memory, so that you fall in love with learning, so that learning becomes a thing that creates more energy than it burns. This is the problem that so many people have, is they're learning in ways that does not create more energy than it burns. And there are ways that create more energy than it burns. Is the way that I'm talking about going to be that way for you? Probably. But with 100% certainty, I don't know. Because so many people, they will come to it and they'll fall in love with it for a while, but they won't implement, and they won't ever feel what it's really about. How do you feel what it's really about? You do it for a while, like anything. You go to karate for one day and you think you're going to actually understand what karate is? Not going to happen. You go for a year, you think you're going to understand what karate really is? No, probably not. But you're going to understand a lot more than the guy who goes for a day. Same thing with memory. Do you think I understand what memory techniques are all about? It's only just beginning. My understanding of it has only just begun. I'm on this, like, I can't imagine, anything could happen. A rock could fall from the sky and hurt me, and my personality will change and I won't care about memory techniques anymore. That could happen. Unlikely, but it could happen. But I'm pretty much in for life, and I'll always train my memory. That's my devotion. It's my thing, you know? It's my yoga. It's my karma yoga in many ways. And I go, it is. It's like mental yoga, right? And I go and I do it, and I train, and I share with you all the things that I discover, package it together, and so forth, and make it possible for you to learn as well. But the real lesson here is not this or that technique. Yes, we can talk about the techniques, we can train on the techniques and so forth, but you need to actually do it, and you need to be in it for life if you really want what this is really all about. This is about a skill for life that enables you to learn every other skill as quickly as possible, with as much fun as possible, and in a way that creates more energy than it burns. If you prefer to have learning techniques that burn energy and make you angry and you get frustrated and you forget, go ahead, have lots of fun. You won't, but there's actual things that you can do. And how do you do it? It's by you constantly seek what it is to learn, and what it is to learn in ways that create more energy than it burns. It's as simple as that. And the burden here, though, is, are you really learning? Are you really learning and remembering, right? Because a lot of people, they confuse activity with accomplishment. They're not actually really learning anything. They're not developing knowledge. They're not remembering. They're not creating connections between this and that. They're not getting better at speaking in a language or whatever, but they're making a lot of action. They're the doer of language learning, or they're the doer of memory techniques, but they're not actually getting the results. And then they get the illusion that the activity is an accomplishment. But activity is not an accomplishment. Accomplishment is accomplishment. And activity may lead to accomplishment, but there's actually accomplishment that just comes from accomplishment. And what that means is, when you get really good at these techniques, you start to have the ability to make sure that you're actually using them. And then that's where accomplishment becomes accomplishment. It starts to build itself and feed itself. Rachid says, Tony Builtin is a great author and educator. Love his books. Yes, he is. He's got a new one that just came out. Get it. Samit says, I would always want a paperback edition. All your books are in ebook edition. I read on Kindle and laptop too, but I always prefer paperback. Samit, almost all my books are available on print. You can order them for print. The Memory Connection is only available in print at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. So you can get my books in print, most of them. PM Kieran is here. Good morning. Good morning. So good to see you, especially you. Love that you're here. Einstein is here. Says, I like your hair, and says, okay, bye. Bye. That spelling of Einstein looks a little bit wrong, so, but maybe it's right. I don't know. So, oh, here's a nice email coming in. Thanks for the inspirational chat. You helped to spur my thinking about various things. Very nice. Always happy to help. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm going to make a couple more notes. I promised that I would start writing the first sentences to this book before I killed this live stream. Killed this live stream. That's not the word that I'm looking for. Ended it. It doesn't end either, because when we break this connection, when we pause this connection, I still go on live streaming. I assume you do too. Okay, so people can't remember the trainings they've been through. The perceived weakness of my own memory. That's another note I've got to add to my notes, because that's what it is. People perceive weaknesses that aren't really there. Your memory is actually just fine the way that it is. It's just you don't understand it. And I mean, maybe not you, but many people don't understand what their memory is. You need to understand what memory really is. And unfortunately, it's a bit mystical, but no one can tell you what your memory really is. You have to experience it for yourself through training, right? Training to see what your strengths are, to see what your limitations are. Then you focus on strengthening your strengths, and then you focus on maybe not strengthening your weaknesses, but just bringing them into balance. Bringing them into balance in meaningful ways that actually get you where you need to go. Where you need to go. Thanks for being here, Rachid. Have a good one. And, it's 2 a.m. Another amazing live. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Just making a few more notes on my book. If you're joining us live, you haven't said hello yet, hit the thumbs up. Let me know what you think should be in a new memory improvement book. We've had so many great suggestions. We got the mind map here for the book. Before we go, I'm going to write the opening sentences. Smeet said, I liked MMM very much, never cared about Anthony's hair. The hair is always an issue. Or the beard. I don't know, I heard someone say that probably a person is not truly spiritual if they cut their hair. I don't know if that's true or not. So many people say so many things. As do I. It's a lot of saying, but what matters is accomplishment that comes from doing. Somehow the more that you do and attest authentically, the more you accomplish, the more accomplishments that you have. All right, I'm just about ready here to write the opening sentences to this book, to draft them here live. Kind of had this idea to write the whole book on a live stream, but I just think that would be boring, listening to typing for hours on end. It would serve no particular good. But I might check in with y'all as I go along to see if you have any more thoughts about what should be in this book. And maybe we can recite it chapter by chapter as they're written. Rasmus says, another problem we face is that we don't train our brain and memory much anymore. For example, phone numbers, calculations, we use machines. Yeah, that's true. There was kind of like a enforced memory practice of the past. Enforced memory practices of the past. Phone numbers. I mean, we can't assume that everybody did that, but in any case. My dad was always really good with phone numbers. But that's because he didn't like the phone book very much. So he would look through them and he'd make sure he memorized them. Or, you'd have them listed on the back on a separate piece of paper. But still, he would memorize them. He was really good at it. Okay. So we already made a note about constantly keeping up with change. I remember you had one to do with language learning, got your book, helped me understand better. So I got the full masterclass. I learned Mandarin Chinese, but could not continue to A level, and regretted not continuing my studying. So here I am. That's a good idea to have in the book. How to get back on the horse. Because when you stop something and then you have to start again, that can be a bit of a trouble. All right. I'm ready just about to start writing the first words here, okay? So I'll type out loud. Mercurial Loves here says, I think these are mental constructs to adapt for sequential order, but my issues are with structure, titles, and bullets. Mercurial, let me know what your issue is with structures and bullets. I'm not sure what the issue is. But now I'm going to start this book. Keep your comments coming. Keep your thumbs up coming. Keep your questions coming. Your additions coming. Time to write. Oh, neck is a little stiff here. Okay, Mercurial says like a table of contents. What about it? Do you want to memorize a table of contents? I'm not sure where you're headed, but good to see you here. Thanks for being here. And let me know more. Okay, so I'm starting to write this book. Is there a perfect path to memory improvement? Question mark. Is there a perfect path to memory improvement? As a matter of fact, there is. And in this book, I will help you prove it to yourself. How does that sound as an opening? Is there a perfect path to memory improvement? As a matter of fact, there is, and in this book, I will help you prove it to yourself. That last sentence is important. It is, in fact, the most important sentence I could ever write. Here is why. You are the only person who inhabits your brain and experiences your memory. This fact means that you are the only person who can take up the mantle of memory improvement and make it meaningful in your life. You can study many books on memory improvement, attend multiple memory improvement seminars, and complete dozens of online memory improvement courses. But only one will ever tell you this truth of the memory improvement experience. Your goal is to become the best memory improvement instructor in the world and the most important student is you. Ha! I like that. I don't know if you like it, but I do. Let's see here. Mercurial has not followed up. Oh, I can memorize lots of information, but what it looks like, the structure of it, have trouble putting it in order. Can you suggest or frame what that process is? Yes, a memory palace. So, if a table of contents needs to be memorized, then you start with the first station in a magnetic memory palace, and then you memorize the first piece of information on there. If you have a 00 to 99, every station will have a number already. Then you go to the second magnetic station and you encode through magnetic imagery the second piece of information that is relative to the second piece of information on the page in the table of contents. Now, that may be top down on the page, but it'll be horizontal in the memory palace. That's one way of doing it. There are others if you use the pillar technique, which I teach in the masterclass. Then you just go from there. So the memory palace is the perfect way of ordering it. And if all those chapters are numbered, and every magnetic station has a number, and you have a 00 to 99 that helps you know what every number of every station is, bang, 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 you're done. That's not necessarily going to help you memorize the contents of each chapter, but then you can have a memory palace for each chapter. I hope that helps. Mercurial says thank you. rock and roll. I hope to see one of your memory palaces one day soon. Rasmus says, one question. When you leave something behind, it can improve learning at times, interleave learning, but how will it start to affect negatively? But after how, I don't know, why should there be a negative thing? Why are you thinking about negatives? Have you had a negative experience? Okay, so, is that an enjoyable experience hearing a guy type out loud what he's writing in his new memory improvement book? Is there a perfect path to memory improvement? As a matter of fact, there is. And in this book, I will help you prove it to yourself. That last sentence is important. In fact, it is the most important sentence I could ever write. Here's why. You are the only person who inhabits your brain and experiences your memory. This fact means that you are the only person who can take up the mantle of memory improvement and make it meaningful in your life. You can study many books on memory improvement, attend multiple memory improvement seminars, and complete dozens of online memory improvement courses, but only one will ever tell you this truth of memory improvement experience. But only one training will ever tell you this truth of the memory improvement experience. Your goal is to become the best memory improvement instructor in the world, and the most important student is you. What is this training that tells the ultimate truth about the perfect path to memory improvement? It is called the magnetic memory method, and it is contained in the book you hold in your hands now. Keep reading each and every word, because in chapter 1, you will discover the basis of all mental perception that leads to remembering information. These are the magnetic modes. There are 7 in total, and are easily remembered using the acronym CAVECOG. You will encounter other acronyms throughout this book. Oh, Mercurio says, I think it's a good soundboard. Chris is back. Sorry about earlier, I did not mean to be uncool, stepped out. My bad, please forgive me. No worries, man. Alles gut. Wir können später ein bisschen erklären. So, you will encounter other acronyms throughout this book. They are meant to be useful tools for you. Some may seem more motivational than practical, but the reality is this. We need motivation frequently in the same way that we need bathing. You may recognize a Zig Ziglar quote lurking in the background, and it's well worth looking up and memorizing. By the time you finish putting the memory tools, you'll discover in this book to work in your life, you most certainly will have that power. This will happen for you because in chapter 2 of this book, you will discover the secrets. I don't know what I call it secrets. The power of magnetic imagery. These special images are based on the magnetic modes you learned about in chapter 1. Then, in chapter 3, you will discover the incredible power of the 7th magnetic mode, space. A lot of people have heard about memory palaces. They may have heard them called mind palaces, a term popularized by the Sherlock series. However, this book has nothing to say about mind palaces, and unfortunately, that program misleads many people about the glory and power of the memory palace tradition. In truth, it doesn't really matter what you call the memory palace, because it is just a mnemonic. Albeit a mnemonic of a very special kind. It is the ultimate mnemonic because it uses space to help us learn, memorize, and recall any information. At least as far as I have seen any information, at least any information that I've seen so far. At least any information that I've ever encountered. Let's check in with our chats here while I'm typing away. Chris says, something you could also include, sometimes we need to remember many different situations or mannerisms that change with each situation, yet certain things stay the same. Say in sports, when player X plays on the right side of the field, he prefers X, but when the player Z guards him, he prefers Y. Yeah, I have some training on that in the masterclass FAQ section. It's not exactly that, but it's related to what do you call it? Improvisational acting. So that's there. But dealing with changing info in sports or improv acting. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. It's a good point. The thing is, though, is that some things come from intuition that you have to earn through experience, and you'll still make mistakes because of the randomness of reality. But if you are in a strategy session, it can. I mean, I think maybe sports maybe isn't the one, but certainly in poker, which I know you're involved in, that it may be a more interesting thing. And there's some pretty classic memory books on poker memory, poker for strategy, and so on. All right, so anyway, I started my book. Yeah, poker is awesome for this. I mean, I don't play poker, but I can imagine that it is. Fun, fun, fun. Remembering actions from players, their positions. Yeah, I guess that would be a book that someone who needs that should write. The tells and the reads, yeah. Memorizing tells, that's a good idea. I'm not sure I've read that in poker strategy books. But then again, aren't you leading yourself down a dangerous path there? The tell in one hand may be different in another, right? Would you really want to hook yourself in so much certainty about someone's tells? Dr. Randy Taz is here. Hi, Dr. Taz. Great name. Can I ask, is it wise to have more than one concept on a single loci in a memory palace? It depends. It really depends. What is the concept? How familiar are you with your memory palaces? And are you going to use the magnetic memory method? Because we don't talk about loci at all. It's just not a useful term. So, say more, please. Really great to meet you. And I don't know what you mean by wise. I mean, wisdom would dictate that you just try things, and see what happens. And then if it doesn't work, then you try something else. But I need more information about what you're talking about and what concepts and what your memory palace experience is. Right, okay, so Chris says you want to not remember someone scratching their nose, meaning X, but rather this time player X did not delay his action. Other times player X might delay action and then remember what happened in real time. Yeah, I mean, I can see it. That would certainly be covered in what I've talked about in the improv setting, but then in a poker situation, you would be managing that level of memorization against the level of memorization of what cards have been out. So they're sort of two different skills, and so you'd want to practice doing two different memory skills at the same time. So I don't know. I just don't have enough poker experience to really speak intelligently about any of those situations. Certainly be interesting though. I don't bet. I was strongly encouraged never to bet. So I've never been a gambling man. It was drilled into me as a kid. Not even play the lottery. That said, I've always lived my life according to the Monty Hall principle, which is when you have 3 doors, you're more likely to win if, when you're given the opportunity to change your mind, you change your mind. And that's been a very good life principle for me to pursue throughout life. I'm faced with another Monty Hall situation right now, and I don't want to pick the other door. I'm very resistant to it at this point, but I know that actually the way to win is to change my mind and pick the other door. So that's what I'm going to do. At it again. Very good. Very good. But yeah, the Monty Hall principle, understanding it and living in accordance with it, has served me very, very well. 66%. Nice one. Love it. Yeah. That would be for my biography, I guess. All right. So, back to a little bit more writing here. If you're enjoying this, hit that thumbs up. If you enjoy contributing to this book being around while I wrote the first page here. The mind map is good. So, chapter 3, you'll discover the incredible power of the 7th magnetic mode, space. We'll dive deeper into this topic in chapter 3. But for now, please understand that the memory palace is a mnemonic. In many of the same, in the core way that an acronym is a mnemonic. It is a device meant to help you remember things. In this case, the memory palace is a location, is the world. In this case, the memory palace enables you to use the world strategically to rapidly encode information you don't know in association with information you already know. On that basis, it is incredibly easy to recall the information for the purposes of transferring it into long-term memory that leads to deep contemplation and the creation of knowledge, fluency in the language, or the development of a skill. Great. Another paragraph down the hatch. Choose, Chris. Okay, so basically we've got maybe the first 2 pages here written. Thank you everybody for being here. Really appreciate the time that we could spend together. If you haven't been to magneticmemorymethod.com, go check out the most recent episode with Christopher Huff. We had a blast, and he shares a lot of good things. And let me know if you have any questions about the new book, if you want to contribute to it with your ideas about what should be in a memory improvement book. Maybe we're going to make a unique one, given that it is crowdsourced, so to speak. Many of my other ones have been crowdsourced to some extent, but this one's kind of cool in the sense of we were here today together to collaborate on many of the ideas that need to be in it to make it the best possible book that it can be. I appreciate each and every one of you who contributed. Magnetic.